You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost the Field with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Accost the Field. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. And Tom, today, we, because we are very, I don't know what to say, poor planners, not great planners, or perhaps we just talk too much. The last 2 weeks, we haven't been able to get listener questions in. So this entire episode is a bonus episode of just listener questions. Tom, it's kind of like an audio or a verbal mailbag. Not bad, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is Purdue week, so if you can't get fired up for an extra podcast for Purdue week, I don't know what to tell you. This is as big as it gets. It's not the game, that's Michigan, but this is a game, so that means it's Purdue week.
You know how I know it's a big game and it's a big week? Because we got to talk to the assistant coaches Wednesday night, Bill Davis and Greg Stadrawa and Brian Hartline, and maybe somebody else. I don't know, but walking in to the facilities, there's a bunch of construction going on there, Tom, and everything is looking really, really nice. And they've put plants on both sides of the walkway into the WAC where we go in. And so Wednesday night they had sprinklers going on both sides, and they were like getting the entire walkway wet. So you had to time like your walk into the doors, like through that walkway. I had to channel my inner teenage gamer, which, let's be honest, is the best version of me that there's ever been. But, I made it through dry. I'm not sure that everybody else was as skilled as I was. And then entering, finally getting into the lobby area there is an OSU staffer who will remain nameless, but isn't just enjoying watching everybody try to, do this. Like I almost had to do a shoulder roll, to avoid one sprinkler. And so, yeah, he's just standing there watching, enjoying everybody ducking and dodging and diving and dipping and dodging. So that was a good start to Wednesday.
This seems like a very low stakes version of the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
About equal stakes.
Did he ask you to drink out of a cup, to pick the right cup?
No, we didn't get to that point. No, we were all too busy. We had to go and do interviews and stuff. But yeah, it was a great time. It was only like 40 degrees, and then you had to duck sprinklers. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cold and flu situations going on at the Purdue press box this weekend. So I hope Ohio State is happy.
I can't wait. Should be fantastic. Are you ready to start answering questions? Are you ready to start answering questions after you answer the question? Are you ready to start answering questions?
Yes. Let's do it.
All right. First question from @Plessinger3. Why hasn't Coach Stud been able to develop 5-star depth in Myers and Davis, especially with how awful our current guards have been? Can you ask Urban if he ever plans to make a major defensive change before a loss?
Tom, you ask Urban.
Yeah. I mean, you won't get much of a response from Urban Meyer if you ask the question that way. And what he'll say is, the defensive coaches will plan on, or the ones who are in charge of making personnel decisions on the defensive side of the ball. As for the first one, I mean, the question is about Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis. Wyatt Davis was a 5-star guard out of California. Josh Myers, a 4-star guard out of Southwestern Ohio. Davis has, from all indications, is pushing for playing time right now. So, you may see him in that rotation, maybe at left guard at some point this year. Myers they've moved him to center this spring. He has been in the rotation there as well. It sounded like he was maybe behind Brady Taylor coming out of the spring. I mean, it's going to take a while for offensive linemen, always take a while to develop. Myers came out of a basically run-only system, so he had basically no pass blocking experience at all coming to Ohio State. So that's going to delay his development a little bit. But I think you are going to see both of those guys at some point, probably in the next year. Davis is probably more likely to contribute this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could be looking at a situation. I mean, Ohio State is losing both of their guards after this season, and they're going to need 2 new ones. Well, whether Myers stays at center or not, we'll see. But I always get a kick out when Urban Meyer says somebody is close to playing time. To me, that means he's close to being asked to play should the need arise. And Wyatt Davis has been getting better and better in terms of like getting into the rotation. They're so stubborn with getting. You can rotate receivers and you can rotate running backs, but when it comes to the offensive line and the quarterbacks, they're just like, no, we need cohesion there. We need consistency. And like we've probably talked about this before, but if you're not getting what you need out of the offensive line, well, maybe a little bit of new blood wouldn't be so bad. And if he is getting close to playing, Wyatt Davis is getting close to playing, why not try it out? Like when Jim Tressel used to put an entire second unit offensive line into the game in the first quarter, just to get people experience early in the season. I mean, they did it at Texas in 2006, went down for a touchdown drive. I don't think it's that crazy to do. And their development, Pat Elflein at this point as a redshirt freshman, didn't really get thrust into anything until Marcus Hall got thrown out of the game at Michigan. If I recall, he played a little bit here and there, kind of like Josh Myers, but then gets thrown into it when Marcus Hall gives the greatest goodbye in college football history, and moved Woody Hayes down to number 2. But they're developing. Like you said, offensive linemen, you just got to give them a little bit more time.
All right, next question from @GoBucks81. If 2 members of the offensive line graded as champions after the Minnesota performance, do I come to the conclusion that this is as good as we are going to get from that unit? Yikes. I saw 90 yards rushing and pressure on Haskins all game.
I mean, if there was pressure on Haskins all game, then he did a really good job of throwing no interceptions, throwing 3 touchdowns, and completing 75% of his passes. So it wasn't all game. The concern for me, Tom, is, early in the season, the first half of the first half, the offensive line, they were all grading out champions almost every week. And then a couple weeks ago, nobody did. After the Minnesota game, a couple of guys did. They've taken a very serious drop in terms of in terms of their grades. We talked on the last show about, what the coaches, we get so much coach speak, but what they're thinking when we see the champions, who grades as champions. So it is concerning that and it's not even necessarily the competition is getting better, because Minnesota, I mean, Urban Meyer and the players love to talk about the Gophers being a top 25 defense, but you should still be able to grade well by doing your job. So the fact that things are not trending well or trending up or even trending steady, I think is a concern. But I don't think that's as good as they're going to get. It's just concerning now. And then eventually, soon here, and once November hits, you need those guys to take that upswing.
Right. Having 2 guys grade out as champions means that is definitely not the best you're going to get. That is not the best you've seen this year. So from that perspective, yeah, that's good news. But you're right. The trend has not been good there. The trend line has been bad there, frankly. So, there is time for them to fix it, but there is definitely stuff that's going to have to get fixed there. And whether that's fixed with a personnel change or, a swift kick in the butt, or whatever the 2018 coaching equivalent of a swift kick in the butt is, something has to happen reasonably quickly, because Michigan State, you're facing a much tougher run defense at Michigan State in just 3 weeks. So it's going to have to get figured out before then. Next question from @BurnerAccount69. What would be your most irresponsible purchase after signing the number 1 overall draft pick contract?
I'll go ahead and answer this one, Tom. So first, so that you can have time to think about it. I was thinking about it, and I went with like a 65 Mustang or maybe a 68 Mustang, simply because it's like a dream car of mine. But there's no way I would ever be able to get my legs in it and get like the steering wheel in a position where I could steer it. So it would look great in my brand new driveway, but it would be completely irresponsible because I wouldn't even be able to shift or anything. My knees would be, who knows what the interior looks like. Maybe if we move the seats back, something like that. But it would be incredibly irresponsible to drive a classic car that I could not physically drive. What about you?
See, mine is probably borderline responsible because I'm boring, but I would buy some property somewhere and probably buy it far, far away from everyone and have a place I could go that doesn't have a phone or internet or, somewhere out in the middle of Montana or Idaho or Wyoming or somewhere out there and just live the Unabomber life without the explosives. Just be far enough out that you can't get on Twitter no matter how hard you try. That I think is really the dream at this point.
But not during the winter.
You'd have to have a pretty well-stocked place in the middle of the winter, and there are still some Overlook Hotel concerns there. So, I think probably that probably is a better choice about 8 months out of the year. So
the Into the Wild movie, where the guy goes and walks off into Alaska, like I watched that and I'm like that would be so cool. But he dies at the end of the movie, so that's not as great. Or like Grizzly Man, you're like that'd be so cool, but then he dies at the end of the movie, so that's not so great. So just make sure there is a roof and a house, and I think I could get behind that as well.
I can see the ESPN ticker now. Number 1 overall draft pick eaten by bear. That's going to be. I mean, the 30 for 30 there is going to be pretty great. So, I mean, at least you get to make a movie. So that's fun. Next one from @CanfieldDream. Where do you see the future of game party food going? Will pizza still be relevant in 20 years? Burger King was popular in the 90s but dropped off. I think wings have dropped off too. I'm going to answer this one first because first of all, Burger King was not game food party food. Burger King is trash.
Thank you.
Burger King is the poor man's Wendy's, and the quality of burgers has improved dramatically in any number of chains. So yes, that's why Burger King has dropped off. I think you have to look backwards to figure out where you're going forwards. To me, the last major development in game party food was buffalo chicken dip, which was, I think, revolutionary just in the last few years. So I think you have to look at that as a classic flavor in a different form. So hear me out here. Taco wing.
I don't know, Tom. I just tweeted out recently that tacos are great and pizza is great. They are not good flavors for other things. So, you'd have to be careful on how you do it. If it's not just, you can't just, taco seasoning. Cause that's not tacos. That's just taco seasoning. While other people will love your idea, I am against it because I am anti-wing. Now, can you do a taco flavored boneless wing, which is much more meat and much less work? Is that a possibility? Can we get that?
Yes, my 5-year-old would also like taco-flavored chicken nuggets. So, yes, I'm sure you and everyone else at the kids' table will love your boneless wings. I forgot also, you have terrible food opinions. I don't know why I'm including you in this conversation.
I think the future, and I think I've said this other places, probably to nobody in particular. I think you could popcorn more forms of food. You've got popcorn chicken, but you could have like popcorn pizza or popcorn fries, which I guess would be called tater tots. But different, like a loaded nacho or a jalapeno popper, but in half to make it more popcorned. I do like the idea of just more bite-sized things, but your idea of new flavors in different aspects or different forms could also fit in there. Deep fried buffalo chicken dip.
I'm just kind of in this headspace right now where I'm trying to play with the idea of pizza rolls in some sort of different form, like some sort of chicken wing, buffalo chicken pizza rolls. Maybe these exist. I have not been as much of a Totino's consumer as I was when my metabolism was about 5,000 times faster 20 years ago. So
sorry, Tom, those are not pizza rolls. Those are pizza raviolis.
Yeah.
Let's stay classy here. You could ravioli a bunch of different things.
You can. That seems like something someone on the Food Network has probably done in the last 2 months, and just we don't know it.
We would definitely not know it. I wouldn't. But yeah, Burger King was never a party food. I don't understand what, like you show up like, hey, who's got the Whoppers? Nobody does that.
And pizza has been relevant for like centuries now. So no, pizza
will always be. Yeah. No.
Pizza will always, pizza. Yes. And you have already seen the taco pizza, the buffalo chicken pizza. So there's, there will be different. It will take on different forms, but pizza will always be there. All right, next question. At Adam Vonderhaar, what is the true issue with the OSU defense? I thought it was just the secondary going into Minnesota. They showed we can't stop the run or slant pass.
Yeah, Tom, there's just really one issue with the defense, totally. But no, it's more than that, and it's execution. It's putting players in the right positions, coaches adjusting better in the second half. Like, the slant pass thing for 3 quarters was killing Ohio State. They started knocking those down in the fourth quarter. I think people need to also factor in how injured the defensive line has been as to why there may be gaping holes in that defensive line. Nick Bosa obviously is gone. Draymond Jones and Robert Landers have not been healthy in weeks, and so they're doing the best they can, but they're not as good as they could be. Losing Jonathan Cooper last week, not having Malik Harrison out there. All of these injuries are catching up with them, and that's why it's coaching. Yes, it's play calling, or there's a question down further, linebackers not being put in a good position to succeed. And then there is lack of execution. I think it's all of it. That's why there's, problems every week. And even though last week there were no big hits, a larger percentage of the plays from the Gopher offense went for 15 yards or more than any other game this season. But Tom, the good news is, they stopped them, after like 15 or 20 yards.
Yeah, eventual defense is defense of some kind. So I think also some of the run issues and some of the slant issues point to a couple of the positions that I think everyone has been sort of yelling about all season. That's all kind of, middle of the field and within 5 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. That's all either linebackers or safeties. So that's what people have been yelling about all year for the most part, is linebackers and safeties on the defense. So I don't know that you saw any new issues get exposed against Minnesota. I think you may have seen old issues get exposed in a different way against Minnesota.
And those run pass options with the slants behind the linebackers, that's just really hard for one guy to defend. You're putting that linebacker in a terrible position, because if he comes up to stop the run, then they're going to throw on him. And if he stays back to defend the pass, then they're going to run it at him. So basically, they're reading that guy every time and putting him in a bad spot every single time. That's what makes the play so effective. That's why you need Greg Schiano to do something other than what they've been doing, so that you don't put Pete Werner in that tough position so often.
Next question from @ChipMinnick. When would you guess Brandon Bowen will be available to play? After the bye week against Nebraska or later?
Well, Greg Stadrawa said on Wednesday he doesn't know. Like, he was asked, about Brandon Bowen and about Brady Taylor. Would he get him back this season? And he said, I hope, but I don't know. Then on Thursday on Urban Meyer's radio show, he said that things are looking good for both guys, and hopefully by next week they'll get them back. Now, I don't know if that means that's when they can start practicing again, and then, who knows from there. But it sounds like they could be back following the the bye week, which I think would probably be the earliest we should expect them. And who knows what that does. I don't see Brandon Bowen getting inserted into the starting lineup right away, or Brady Taylor going to center and moving Michael Jordan to left guard. It increases the depth chart, increases the depth and maybe gives them some flexibility. Helps in practice once they get back, so you don't have to keep giving all of these veterans all of these reps and wearing them down even more. But I don't know, like, if he's available to play, they're available to play in 2 weeks. I still don't know that they'd play much.
No, that's a depth thing more than anything else. I think people are looking at that as what, one or both of those guys can come off the DL and just jump right up and be ready to go and be ready to be an immediate impact starter on the offensive line. And I don't think that's realistic. They may, one or both of them could contribute at some point this year, but my sort of default position until you see one of them starting, assume you're not going to see them starting, would be my kind of guess. Next one from @BrutusBuckeye13, who does not want to spend his entire commute crying into his steering wheel, so he'll ask a non-Bosa question. Do you think the loss of Harrison and Cooper last week may be a blessing in disguise? If anything, they should be well rested and have some pep in their step.
I'm sure the coaches would have rather had them in the lineup last week, Tom, but it gave other guys some experience and it allowed them to get some rest. So I think that helps in that way, but you'd still rather have them out there getting more experience, because it's not like they've played at this point to a level where, they're Nick Bosa or Ryan Shazier or whatever. And you're just like, you know what, you can take it easy. You don't need to get any better. You're the perfect player. Nobody on this defense is the perfect player, so they can still use all of the game reps that are available to them.
Right. I mean, you see, and it's not like you see them saying, we'll be fine against Minnesota. Go ahead and take the week off, Jordan Fuller. Like, just if they felt they could just completely put it in cruise control and, play the starters for like a quarter or not at all just to rest everyone, I'm sure they would to some degree, but that is definitely not what you saw last week. So no, I mean, that's not what they chose. Now, as an indirect result, yeah, sure. I mean, they're probably a little fresher, a little better rested than they would have been otherwise. And I think you're also 2 weeks away from seeing a very different looking Ohio State defense. Coming off that bye week, give Draymond Jones a week off. Give Robert Landers a week off. Give Jonathan Cooper a week off. Damon Arnett, Malik Harrison. I mean, you get all those guys closer to 100% or at 100% coming off that bye week. That changes what this defense looks like. I think right now, everything is terrible and everything is on fire, which is sort of where everyone is mentally with this defense right now. But I think that there's a possibility that, set aside whatever else they will fix schematically or personnel-wise over that break, just having guys back to healthy, back closer to 100% is going to make a huge difference in how this defense looks. Yep. All right, next one from @Indiana Buckeye. The 2018 football squad so far this season are most like what other Buckeye team in the 2000s?
For me, there's only one answer, and it was the only team in the 2000s that was really not pass first, but could pass first, and that'd be the 2006 team, where you had Troy Smith, who would rather pass than run. He ran the ball quite a bit his first 2 years as a starter, didn't run it much in 2006. That was also a defense that had issues in the secondary at safety, so there's some there's some correlation there as well. So yeah, the 2006 team is really, for me, I don't even know what other team it could compare to, just because I'm so looking at the offense and the defenses back then, because of Jim Tressel, because of Tressel ball, didn't usually give up a bunch of points. Maybe the 2004 team did, but even that defense, when you look at the points gave up, would be pretty favorable to most of Urban Meyer's defenses. But offenses have changed over the years. But what team did you go with?
We did the embrace debate thing on Tuesday, so I also went with 2006. So RIP embrace debate. We have We have come to the same conclusion, so we must be right.
Yes.
Next question from Kappa Remote. I'd like you to grade the position coaches with any scale you choose, and then you have a note in here that the grading scale is Mark D'Antonio, Jim Haycock, Jim Bowman, Mark Snyder, Nick Siciliano. So D'Antonio is an A, Haycock's a B, Bowman's a C, Snyder's a D, and Siciliano is a you tried. Yeah. Do we want to just take turns on this, or do we want to go?
Yeah, we can take turns. I'll go first with Day. I'm grading him a Mark D'Antonio. I can't go Mark D'Antonio plus. I'll go Mark D'Antonio minus because he is also the offensive coordinator, and there are running game problems. So, as great as Dwayne Haskins looks, and when we used to watch Tate Martell play, he looked pretty good too. So I'll go D'Antonio minus, but it's real close to just a straight Mark D'Antonio.
Yeah, I had him as a Mark D'Antonio, just from a position coach. I mean, the question was position coaches, so as a position coach, I'm giving him a Mark D'Antonio for sure. Yeah. Next one, Tony Alford. I gave him a Jim Haycock because he has been. I would have given him a D'Antonio last year, but the production has not been there. Just based solely on this season, he's probably more like a Bowman, but he has some residual goodwill from the last few years. But here's a little confession: I have never cared for the Tote Nation hashtag. I think that it just has always left me feeling a little flat. So yeah, I'll give him a Haycock, just a solid Haycock, not a minus, not a plus, just a good solid 3.0.
Hey, you can go a long way with a good solid 3.0 with a good solid Haycock.
you never mind. Nope, leave that one alone. What did you have Alfred as?
Yeah, I went with Jim Haycock as well. It's like you said, based on last year as well, you know what he's capable of. I still have, even in the past, he hasn't been able to get a third guy ready, and sometimes it's been difficult for him to get a second guy ready. So I might actually go Haycock minus, but the guys do know what they should be doing, and we've talked. It's not necessarily their fault they're not getting all of these yards. We know what they are capable of when things are there. So yeah, I'll go with a straight across the board Jim Haycock grade on that one. Yeah.
All right. Next one, Brian Hartline. Now, Brian Hartline has, maybe taken his midterms right now. He has not taken his final exam yet. He has not taken a final exam at all. So it's a little early to be grading Brian Hartline. But with that caveat, I'm giving Brian Hartline a D'Antonio with the possibility that if this year continues as it has, he could be a D'Antonio plus by the end of the year. The strides we've seen from the wide receivers this year have been extremely impressive. They've been good blocking. They've been good catching. The routes look crisp. They look like they know what they're doing, which raises some questions about the previous few years. But I'm giving him a D'Antonio right now with the possibility that could improve by the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm with you, giving him a D'Antonio. However, I would say that all of the tests that he has taken so far, because he's got veterans, he's basically working with an open book. So he gets to take all of his tests with the open book, all of the quizzes, and I think sometimes the answers are even on the board. So he's blessed with these tests and what he's got to work with. But every single receiver has gotten better.
Were the pages of this book smudged last year? Because the book didn't seem to be helping last year's student.
No, like all Ohio State professors, he made the students go buy the new edition of the book. And so yeah, this is nice and clean and crisp, and they're all better, collectively better as well, and as a unit. And it's not just the first unit or the second unit; everybody is better. And Urban Meyer was talking on Thursday about the young guys coming up, like watch Blue Smith and Chris Olave next year, where these young guys are learning from the older guys. So yeah, I'd give Brian Hartline a good solid Mark D'Antonio. And right now, like you said, everything is looking very well. So he would have to just crater, the final part of the semester, which, hey, we've all been there, right?
As long as he doesn't tear up his pull a gird and tear up his book, which would, I don't know, involve. It's actually a troubling metaphor considering we just compared the wide receivers to a book. So,
well, maybe we figured out why the last coach had an issue.
He tore. Yeah, I'm going to leave that alone too. Next one, Coach Stud on the offensive line.
This is like, I'd go Jim Bowman plus, where he has had to reshuffle everything, and I think we're seeing that it's not so easy to do that without a Billy Price or a Pat Elflein, and Michael Jordan has to be the leader up front, and you come into the season without a proven left tackle, which makes things difficult as well. And he's done as well as he could with Thayer Munford. Malcolm Pridgeon has maybe been, to say the weakest of the group is relative to how well they have played through most of the season. So Jim Bowman plus, verging on Jim Haycock minus, but right now with things the way they're going, I'm going to stick with the Jim Bowman plus, with the mention that he could do much better and finish well this season, as they should, as all offensive lines should. The questions should begin to be repetitive, and the answers, you should be able to get them quicker. So right now I'm going to go with the Jim Bowman plus. What about you?
That's what I had. I had a Bowman plus, and really based on this season alone, I'd give him probably a Bowman, but he's got some residual goodwill from the previous years, so I rounded up to a Bowman plus. But you're right. I mean, this very easily could end up as a good solid Haycock plus if things kind of pull together as they could over the next month. It's not that far off, but we haven't seen it yet. There's still time for him to turn in some extra credit and get that grade up, but not great right now. I think I have the easiest one right now, which is Larry Johnson, which he is the most D'Antonio plus coach on this staff. So I think I don't think there needs to be that much conversation on this one, but D'Antonio plus on Larry Johnson, and that's pretty much my grade on him every year.
I am actually going to give him a Jim Haycock, because he is not able to answer some of the questions correctly. Now, I will say that a lot of the questions this season have been like, what color is W? And, he's getting a lot of questions that there are no answers for. And so you're obviously going to get some of those wrong. And it's because of the injuries, and it's not his fault. He does everything he can to keep players from getting injured. That's why the rotation is there. But, the production isn't there, and that's because the players aren't always there. So I'm going with a Jim Haycock, which is a fine grade, and was perfectly fine for years and years at Ohio State.
See, I have to strongly disagree with you there, because you've got Nick Bosa's out for the year. You've had Robert Landers banged up a bunch this year. You've got Draymond Jones, who sprained his ankle right at the end of the Penn State game. That's now been 2+ weeks with three of your, the four guys who were starting defensive linemen at the start of the year hurt. Plus, you've got Jonathan Cooper, who missed a week and a half. I mean, that's four of your top, 5 defensive linemen have been hurt. And you've already seen true freshmen making an impact there. Tyreek Smith has made an impact there. Tommy Togiai has seen time there. You've seen some creativity there, moving Haskell Garrett to the end position. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that's out of his control that I'm not going to punish him for. I'm not going to punish him for the fact that the teacher decided to teach this particular test in, give him a pop quiz in Swahili instead of English. Like, that's just, there's some stuff that you can't really be held accountable for, I don't think. Because that is by far the position where they're the most banged up right now, and it's still the most solid position on that defense, I think. That just positional grouping. Agree or disagree?
I don't want to answer that question because it will make me wrong. So I would say, what is the capital city of a tree?
Leaf.
You've won this round, Tom Orr.
I think the correct answer would probably be trunk, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Right, what?
I'm so excited. I believe me, when we were going down this list, I skipped ahead to see whose turn it was for this one. So I'm delighted to see that you get to go first. Hey, Gerd, what's the Gerd for Bill Davis, linebackers coach for The Ohio State University?
I'm going to give this one a Mark Snyder, which is normally it should be the lowest grade you can get as an Ohio State coach, because I'm not convinced that Greg Schiano isn't responsible for a lot of the issues at linebacker. However, the linebackers are pretty much like they were last year as well, and there are issues there. So I'm at this point, you think about it, Tom, and as we talk this out, the linebackers at Ohio State over the last couple of years have not been up to Ohio State standards. They're not what we've come to expect. They're not as productive, as reliable, as consistent. But he is a position coach who coaches players, and so is Mark Snyder. I don't know that Nick Siciliano was, so that's why he is the lowest grade, and I can't give anybody that lowest grade unless they physically hurt me or say something mean to me. So I'm going to go with a Mark Snyder, not a Mark Snyder minus, or certainly not a Mark Snyder plus, if there is such a thing, just a straight Mark Snyder, which is you have disappointed, you need to get your grades up, your father wants to see you, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
It must have been one heck of a great bachelor party. Next one, Taver Johnson. He is very much in that Brian Hartline mold, where it's probably too early to give him anything approaching a final grade here, because you don't know exactly how much is his influence versus, sort of the leftover influence from Kerry Combs. And, it's sort of a transition year, and he hasn't had these guys for a full year yet. The corners have been fine. The corners have not been great. And you don't have Denzel Ward this year. So, and Damon Arnett's been hurt. Damon Arnett has probably been their best corner this year, and Damon Arnett's been hurt. So it's kind of tricky. This was the one that I probably spent the most time thinking about, because it's a little bit unfair to grade him because there's a lot of questions here. I'm going to go a Bowman, maybe a Bowman minus here. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not terrible right now, but it's not great. And I don't quite, he's not coaching up the talent necessarily to a real big degree. The talent is there, but a lot of the talent is young, and Arnett's hurt. And Kendall Sheffield looks better than he did last year. Damon Arnett, I think, probably looks better than he did last year. Jeff Okudah probably looks better than he did last year. They're also a year more experienced, so you don't know quite how much to attribute to Johnson versus just to another year of experience. So I'll say a Bowman with the understanding that if they don't improve more, that grade probably drops, and there's also room for him to improve to, if the corner play gets a little better, if Arnett's healthy that last month of the season, and you start saying maybe some interceptions, that maybe that grade could end up as a Bowman plus by the end of the year.
I was thinking about this. I would go with the Bowman as well, but I view it as right now he's taken an essay exam, and what he's written, the professor's like, yeah, I mean, it's mostly correct. Maybe some of the details you've left out, and you could have made this a more, you could have finished this blue book and done a second one. You didn't have to get all of the answers in just the one page, because it's fairly correct, but you could have fleshed it out more. And so, a Bowman. Did you have a what was your grade for Bill Davis, by the way?
honestly, what I have there is Davis, you go first. That's what I have there.
All right. We did that. Alex Grinch.
I think this is you. Your turn.
This is me. Yeah, I feel like there's maybe an incomplete. So I don't. Who would that be? That would be Bill Sheridan. I'll give Alex Grinch a Bill Sheridan, who was Ohio State's cornerbacks coach from January of 2012 through February of 2012, and then went to the New York Giants to be their defensive coordinator, I think, and then Ohio State hired some guy from Cincinnati by the name of Kerry Combs. So I'll give Alex Grinch a Bill Sheridan here. Jordan Fuller is, he's going to be fine. Anybody could coach him basically to be a very good safety. And it's tough to bring in, to Isaiah Pryor, Jocelyn Wynn. I don't think the depth is there at the position that Urban Meyer wants or that Alex Grinch would like, even though he's working with better players likely than he's had before. These are players that are mostly untested, except for Jordan Fuller. So to put too much of a grade or, weight on what he's done so far, I don't think is fair. But if I had to, he's in the Bowman range, and just I need to see more, but I need to see more. That's where I am.
Yeah, and that's fair. I had him as a Bowman as well. It's he has not messed up Jordan Fuller. Jordan Fuller's been good this year. That's good. Isaiah Pryor seems to be getting better. It seems like they're showing a little bit of creative thinking and a little flexibility in mixing Shaun Wade in there as well. That's encouraging. I have him as a Bowman here right now, but that's almost a placeholder because this is either going to be this gets much better and he's a Bowman plus or a D'Antonio minus, or this doesn't get better and it's one of the reasons they don't contend for a national championship this year, and then he ends up in the C range. So next one from Saludabuck. When will Ohio State start lining up the linebackers in an effective position, i.e. behind the defensive line and in front of the defensive backs? So, and Greg Schiano on Tuesday this week got a question about linebacker alignment and gave a kind of vague answer, like, yeah, you move your linebackers around a little bit, and it's something that we look at, and it was not a real pointed answer. Did Bill Davis have anything more pointed and interesting to say on that?
No, Tom, he did not. It's, I think what they all say is, well, we don't do the same thing every time. You got to change things up. You've got to mix coverages, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. And they did respond, like I said earlier, they responded better in the fourth quarter, but that was also corners and Shaun Wade getting it involved as well. But it is alarming, or I guess frustrating, or when you see those linebackers right on the line of scrimmage, and then you watch the running back go right by him. And I know everybody's supposed to be filling the proper gaps, and you wonder if being that close to the line of scrimmage is where they need Tough Borland, because maybe the further away he is, I don't know if he's less effective because of his health right now, even though he says he's 100%. So you wonder what would happen if they just lined up like a few yards back and just in a standard 4-3 alignment. And, you'd probably have to split Pete Werner out against the slot, but just keep the linebackers back and let's see what happens. And if you want to blitz, then go blitz, but at least give them a shot to stay away from the offensive lineman for the first second or two of the play,
I do know. Yeah, I mean, that it certainly couldn't hurt at this point, right? I mean, give it a shot. I don't know. Next question from L Patriots. Speed, spreads, and RPOs, rules that favor the offense and disfavor the defense, injury tents, $1 million assistant coaches, and the prevalent focus on the college football playoff versus leagues championships and Rose Bowls. Now, this is what would WWW think of today's college game. That's either Worldwide West, former Memphis booster, or typo, and it should be Wayne Woodrow Hayes. How would he address the current team's opportunities to improve? Now, I will address this from the Woody Hayes perspective. You can do the Worldwide West perspective later. And as far as Woody Hayes, I mean, I don't think I probably need to tell you what Woody Hayes would think of an offense that put up 2.9 yards per carry against Minnesota. I think he would probably not be in favor of it, and he would probably, if he was around today, he would probably get fired again for punching a player after that kind of game. As far as what he would suggest for the team to improve, I mean, I think the answer is obvious: more fullback runs.
I disagree with you, Tom. I think he would love 2.9 yards per carry since he loves 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
But I don't know. Does the dust count for that extra tenth of a yard? That's.
I honestly think that he would have stayed in the military. He just wouldn't have even gotten involved, or he would have become a professor at Ohio State. And then I was imagining him as this conservative guy, like politically conservative, discussing politics with the professors at Ohio State today. And that would be as entertaining to watch as his, being upset on the sideline, because he would, be ripping up, world maps in the classroom, or, throwing something this, or, taking an eraser. And although I don't think they have chalkboards anymore in schools. Did you know that?
We are impossibly old.
So I don't think today's football would have suited him well. And so he would have to have found something of today that would suit him, which
Stanford service academies. I mean,
yeah.
Right? I mean, really, he would probably have liked Stanford football more than any other team right now that I can think of. I mean, service academies are running a variant of triple option. He'd probably be okay with that. I mean, with his love of the military, I think he'd probably be completely on board with Ken Niumatalolo and Navy. I think that
he'd be in his 37th year at Army.
Next one from TGW. Why no DeMario McCall? Why? And the answer is because they trust the other guys more. It's the same reason as there's no Tate Martell.
I feel like we should change the name of the podcast to an explanation of why DeMario McCall doesn't play, because we get it every week, or, during the Facebook Live. Yeah, there's other guys in front of him. They trust them more. They trust the running backs in front of him more. They trust the H-backs in front of him more. And as we always say, wait till next year. And then we'll see if they trust him at that point, when the lineups are much more favorable to him seeing the field.
You got to remember, he started the year as the number one kick returner and punt returner, and then he muffed a punt, and he muffed two. He had at least one, maybe two muffs in the first, or fumbles in the first couple games, and you can't do that. And if you do that, then you lose your spot, and that's what happened to him. So, and he hasn't been back on the field to show that he will not do that anymore. So it's hard to get back in there in the coach's good graces in the middle of the season after something like that. Next one from Mobuck. It seems like Ohio State is average running inside, but struggle more getting outside. Could this be more of a weakness of tight end blocking than offensive line, or is it a combination of both? What needs to improve the most to get the running game going? Gerd, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, to get to the outside, they almost need to. They have to get to the second level first. We saw them try to go outside last week, and they were getting stopped for 1 yard, no yards, 2 yards. And this week, talking to Greg Studrawa about the difficulties of run blocking on the RPOs, because after the Minnesota game, Kevin Wilson said the guys need to stay on their blocks longer. Yet when you call these RPOs, which a lot of them are, if they stay on their blocks too long and it turns into a pass, you're looking at an ineligible man downfield. And yet they have to assume everything is a run. And yet it seems like because they throw the ball so often out of those, like Urban Meyer said, about 10 of the called runs last week turned into passes with the RPO stuff. So they know that it's more likely to be a pass because the defense is going to gear up to stop the run. So if they take that read away, then they're going to throw it. So it's almost like they're not being aggressive enough because They assume a pass is coming, and then also maybe that just takes over the entire demeanor of the offensive line when you become so pass heavy. And they've talked about being guarded against that, but they need to hold the blocks longer. They need to get into the second level. There's been no explosive plays in the running game in forever, and that's because there's nobody blocking those second level guys. The linebackers aren't getting, the safeties aren't getting blocked, and they just come in and pick off the running back because they're outnumbering Ohio State inside the hashes. And does it help getting outside? Sure, but they also view the RPO stuff, those passes, as part of the running game. So even though they only rush for like 89 yards, you have to count the RPO stuff. The coaches will count that in, and if it's like 160 yards RPO passes, now you're looking at 250 yards, quote unquote, rushing, and now that's half of your 500. So they still want to be able to run the ball inside better. They need to on the short yardage and things of that nature. But the rushing yards are going to be lower this year because they're throwing it more on those RPOs, which last year they ran RPOs as well. But it was instead of an RPO, it was a RRPO, where it's JT running or JT handing off or JT throwing, and usually it was the RR, and there was rarely a P last year.
Can we just circle back for a moment to the point in this conversation where you talked about officials calling an illegal man downfield on an RPO? Because I mean, that would be one of those like Make-A-Wish things, like seeing a shooting star. Like, really? Wow, I can't believe it. That is, if I was Ohio State's coaching staff, I would start worrying about that the second official started calling it, which is sometime in the future. That's like holding. You could call that on just about every play, but they don't do it unless it's really, really, really glaring. By the textbook definition, it happens all the time.
Yeah, and
it almost never gets called.
And to tell you how bad Isaiah Prince's game was on game last week, he did get called for one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But I think that was the first one I think Ohio State's been called for all season, right? I can't remember another one.
Yeah, I don't remember another one. Not from a lineman. They may have covered somebody up, but what Greg Studrawa tells his guys is if you get called, you get called. You can't worry about it. Your job is to drive that man as far down the field as you can, and it's up to Dwayne Haskins to get the ball off. Because even when they got called for it last week, it's because Dwayne Haskins pumped instead of getting rid of it right away. So it wasn't Isaiah Prince's fault. It's never going to be the lineman's fault for taking his man downfield. It's always going to be the quarterback for not getting the ball out quick enough. So they want them to don't even worry about being downfield, but it still seems like it's in their head.
All right, next one from at burner count 69. Over under 2 position changes or new starters coming out of the bye week.
Tom, I would put the over under on 0.5.
I was going to say that's a pretty easy under for me. I mean, maybe you see one on the offensive line. Maybe you see Shaun Wade at free safety. Maybe. I mean, maybe at linebacker, but I don't think I would count any of those as a certain one. So, count all 3 of those as a half if you want to, and that still doesn't get you to 2. So, yeah, I think that's an easy under on the 2 for me.
Yeah, I don't see anybody losing a job. I expect them to continue to build up Isaiah Pryor because they don't want to lose Shaun Wade as the nickel either. So you continue to solidify. Urban Meyer talked this week about like improving what you're good at, or like perfecting what you're good at and improving what you're bad at. They want to increase what Isaiah Pryor and Shaun Wade can do, not eliminate one guy altogether. So I don't foresee any changes.
Yeah, I mean, you could see Josh Proctor maybe make a move at safety, but not taking that starting job. Just maybe he takes that backup free safety job and moves Wade back to the nickel full time. Like, I could see that kind of thing happening, but yeah, I don't see a big change in starters coming. Next one from at Brutus Buckeye 13. Dante Booker was seen doing some defensive end drills yesterday. Any insight on if he will be getting some snaps at defensive end?
No insight. Hasn't been talked about because it was only seen, off to the side. We've talked about it in the past, as in like, do it. And Ohio State has some formations where they'll have a stand-up linebacker, the jack linebacker. I don't think we've really seen it this year, and saw a little bit of it last year with Sam Hubbard. But, I mean, I think they could employ that some more, and that would be a good way to ease that rotation and also to get Dante Booker in the game, because as a linebacker, he's had some up and down moments, but Tom, he's also had some playmaking moments as well. And I think if you can get him involved in rushing the passer, that, maybe you get some Carter Coughlin type of things out of him with his speed and athleticism off the edge.
Yeah, we like you said, we talked about this spring and said, yeah, I mean, he is athletic enough that you want to get him on the field somewhere. So if he's not going to play at linebacker, like, sure, make him a one-dimensional. You're not going to probably teach him a whole bunch of great defensive end techniques in the middle of the season. Moving him there right now, but I'm going to channel Kirk Herbstreit right now and say pin his ears back and rush the passer. I mean, it's sure. I mean, give it a shot. Why not? I would have liked them to make this decision in April so that he could spend the summer bulking up a little bit, add another 10 pounds or 15 pounds or so, and get a little bigger so you're not a complete liability in the run game. But, sure, give it a shot. Why not? I don't think you're going to see him in any kind of like real meaningful role, but he could be maybe he's a role player at some point, or a real situational substitution kind of thing. Sure, why not? Next one from @Plessinger3. How much money would it take to get Ed Warner back to exclusively coach the line while also having restraining order on a distance he must remain away from any offensive game planning? It's going to be pretty painful if we lose to Michigan this year because of him. I mean, he is. I'm sure I've said this on Twitter, and I'm sure this is kind of mean, but the old business principle, the Peter principle, that should just have Ed Warner's picture right next to it. Ed Warner is so good. The Peter principle is basically everyone will be promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. That was Ed Warner. Like, he was so good as an offensive line coach, and it's like, well, we have to keep him around, so now he's going to call plays, and oh no, that's bad. It's like having a really good flight attendant and being like, okay, now you can fly the plane. Oh no, that was a bad choice. As my son's preschool teacher used to say, that's a sad choice. Don't do that. As far as how much money will it take to get Ed Warner back, I don't think that was the friendliest breakup. I don't think that was a mutual breakup. I don't think that Ohio State offensive coordinator to Minnesota offensive line coach is probably truly a lateral move. So I'm going to guess that he probably wouldn't be racing back to coach on the staff again.
1.5 million.
If you're going to throw money at any coach on that Michigan defense and that Michigan assistant coaching staff, write a check to Don Brown. That's who I want. Bring Don Brown down here. I want Don Brown for the interviews. I want Don Brown for the defensive schemes. Ed Warner did a very nice job here. Ed Warner is a very good offensive line coach. But if Ohio State is going to back up the Brinks truck for someone, back up the Brinks truck for Don Brown.
If you've got $3 million to spend, how are you going to, to bring Michigan coaches over, and you need at least, I'll go $2 million. How would you spend that to get Don Brown and is there another guy on that on that Michigan staff that you would go after?
Who's the linebackers coach? Chris something, the
Partridge?
one that had Chris Partridge, who had the good
go.
New Jersey recruiting ties.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I guess he'd be the second guy. I mean, yeah, it would be great to bring Ed Warner back, but that's not going to happen. So, I would just spend all my money on Don Brown, and then just hope that like Jay Harbaugh just as mad as his dad and just wants to leave for spite and does it for like $3 a year.
The great thing about Warner is that if he was coaching at Ohio State right now, and you have this all of these offensive line questions, you would just be like, they'll be fine. They're always fine. Don't worry about it. Once November hits, everything's going to fall into place, and that's what it seemed like and because that's how it always happened. And there was all kinds of tough work going on behind the scenes, but you could always count on the offensive line. And with Greg Studrawa, you lose that confidence only because he's only been here for a year and a half, right? I don't know.
That sounds 2 years, right? Because he left years. 2.5 years, right? Because it was 2016.
A
year and a half. Because a year and a half. Because Warner left after the Clemson game, so that was just the 17 season and the 18 season.
Right,
so,
but I think Warner moved to tight ends, and they brought in Studrawa. This would have been a better discussion off of the podcast. But the offensive line got better as the year went on last year. But that was the thing that Warner you could always count on. But I think they could, you throw $1.5 million at him with the idea that you don't even have a headset on, so you don't even get to listen to the plays.
Now you're Brady Hoke. Last one from @ChristopherNoel. Here's a random question for you guys. Why hasn't OSU honored Orlando Pace's number 75 yet? High time we put that number in lights at the shoe. Now, I mean, the criteria there is Heisman Trophy winners, or first African-American player to play at Ohio State, or guy who got the stadium built because he was so freaking awesome a century ago. So he's not part of any of those groups. Now, the fact that those other, that Bill Willis and Chick Harley are in there means it's not quite as hard written in stone criteria as just Heisman Trophy winners. But, I mean, the real answer here is because of Danny Werfel and some really stupid voters 22 years ago.
That is the real answer. But I think they need to change. I tweeted this out Thursday night. They need to change the parameters, because if you're just going with Heisman, that's running backs and quarterbacks, and it's insulting to every other position. Orlando Pace should have his number honored. They don't retire numbers anymore. They just honor them. And, you could see 36 up there for Chris Spielman, or maybe 3-time All-Americans like James Laurinaitis and Mike Doss. There's a few. There's certainly Orlando Pace is certainly one of them who deserves. If you're going to honor numbers and honor players, there may not be any more deserving guy than him. He's the most dominant Buckeye I've ever seen, and my opinion, my words should count for something, Tom.
You didn't talk quite long enough for me to look up whether Tom Sklanadian was a 3-time All-American.
I believe he was.
I think he might have been.
But he's a kicker, so Hunter.
Wes Fessler was. That's exciting. Now the question is, am I remembering correctly?
Did he have a number?
Well, I'm on the sports reference page, and none of these have school names on them. So Wes Fessler, I'm pretty sure, actually played at Ohio State, not just coached. Load faster. Yes, Ohio State. Good. Look at me. Look at me knowing my 1928 Ohio State football.
It's you.
Look at me. And I think they should retire. Yes, it's Wes Fessler and James Laurinaitis. Looks like the only 2 Buckeyes on this list. So,
Mike Doss was as well.
Take it up with sportsreference.com. Maybe he was not a consensus All-American those 3 years. I don't know. But You're right. He was. So, it's crazy, but you think about how many great players Ohio State has had. Like, you would normally, most schools, it would be College Football Hall of Famers, but then it would just be the whole stadium would be ringed in names already, and it would be every time a coach retires, you'd have to put his name up because it's just automatic that they get everyone up there. And then Nikki Sualua, I have to put him up there too.
I'm with you on that one. Orlando first, then Nikki Sualua.
But instead of a number, just put a neck roll.
Exactly. Everybody would know.
There you go.
That covers it. That's our Accost the Field mailbag, and we've answered everything as to our best ability, which we apologize for. We might, I don't know if we'll ever do this again. We may. If we can't get through the questions in a couple of podcasts in a row, then this is what you'll get again. So we thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network, and make sure to check us out after the game from West Lafayette. We'll be doing an instant reaction on Facebook Live and also recording our instant reaction podcast for Sunday morning. And check out the rest of the content at theozone.net. Tons of stuff about this week. Purdue, Ohio State, game of the century. So thanks y'all for listening, and we will talk. Tom, it's serious.
Game of a century. I mean, at the beginning of the podcast, we said it's not the game, but it's a game. And this is not the game of the century, but it's the game of a century.
It's a game of a century.
This is definitely somewhere in the dark ages.
All right. I'm looking forward to it, even if you're not. So we'll see y'all there, live and in person in West Lafayette. Thanks for listening.
She threw away the motel key. I wish it never meant nothing to me. Say you will, now say you will. Oh yeah. Say you will, now say you will. If you tell me that tomorrow's alright, we could steal a car and leave.